I should probably...
Are you talking about internet?
All right.
All right. That is up and working. And it looks like, do you have two separate computers going, Will?
Yeah, I do. It's the best way for me to be able to manage the survey poll and actually have good audio video with presentation. So this is sort of my go-to COVID era situation.
Perfect. So.
In fact, I should make sure I can see that stuff. There we go. Yeah, so you guys up to anything fun this summer so far?
Oh, we are overscheduled. Like, we're trying to make up for all of the things we didn't do last summer, apparently.
Okay, so it's just every 2 seconds there's something new going on.
Seemingly. Who else feels that way?
We got some family reunions that, and my daughter wants to do college visits, so I think our month of July is going to be pretty busy.
Ooh, are you going to road trip it or fly for all the college visits?
I'll probably do a road trip, especially since the ones that she wants to visit are all kind of within 3 states of each other. So.
Oh, cool. I remember those days.
Are they within 3 states of here?
That'd be Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Indiana.
So sort of.
So it's not too bad. I mean, plus my older daughter has one of her college friends lives in Ann Arbor, so which is University of Michigan is the one my daughter wants to visit. So it kind of works out well to combine that and go visit her friend as well.
All right.
Cool. That's where I went, University of Michigan. So,
Alrighty.
if you've got any questions from how it was like X number of years ago.
Tom, if you actually do sign up for one of those states, I'd suggest you get an iPass.
Oh, we already do have that.
Saves you 50% going through Chicago.
Yeah, so we just went and picked up my older daughter from Massachusetts. So we had that all along. So we have the Easy Pass actually, which works with in Chicago as well.
Illinois is nice because they don't charge you an annual fee.
Yeah, I don't think we get charged an annual fee for the one we got. We picked it up in Pennsylvania. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and I see a bunch of people starting to roll in now. So right on time.
Yeah, on the dot.
And Jeff Scapp, you have your camera on, but it looks like you have your lens shutter closed. Or you have a very black background, one of the two.
You are correct, Judd. Judd, I do have my laptop cover closed. So,
Got it.
yeah.
So.
I just soon keep it that way for right now.
That's fine. You can probably turn off video too. You might if you don't want it on. There should be should have a little camera on it.
How's that?
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
So save you some bandwidth.
Okay.
So. Otherwise, you can get a lovely background like this one. See, I'm not clear what this building is supposed to be. It looks sort of like some sort of massive, like, church that was converted into like a modern office building. I'm pretty sure it also doesn't exist.
Yeah, I like the outdoor backgrounds myself.
Yeah. Chris, welcome. So,
You're muted, I think.
you are muted.
Yeah,
Too
hey
bad,
everybody.
Because you look like you have a very nice microphone setup.
It's always a good icebreaker. People ask me about this, and I joke around with it all the time. I say things like, LabVIEW community coming at you live from Austin, Texas, where it's a sunny 110 degrees. Melt your face off. Whatever. That's not the story. We'll actually get to it. It has to do with G Central.
I'm kind of curious about your painting behind you there. That looks like a painting.
Back over there?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a little bit of insight into my character, my personality some. I like the interesting juxtaposition of order and chaos. So there's structure to it, but there's also some chaos as well. And one of my favorite things to take pictures of is reflections in skyscrapers, where you have the distortion of windows, but you have the ordering of frames. I think it's fascinating.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely see that in the painting now too.
It's good stuff.
Well, if you come visit us, so we now have a football stadium in Minneapolis that people really like to take reflection pictures in.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. If you, I'm sure you can do a quick Google search. It's U.S. Bank Stadium. If you look for the reflected pictures when the sun's setting, I've seen a few interesting ones. So, not as good as the Bean in Chicago,
right,
which is like sort of the ultimate, reflection picture.
Dude, that's really cool. Wow.
Yeah.
My goodness.
I feel like I need to.
You can update your screen and we can look at pictures and reflect it off of U.S. Bank Stadium. Maybe we can make it the new Minneapolis LabVIEW user group picture.
So this is great. This is my first time attending your all's user group. Tell me a little bit about it.
What do you want to know? I mean,
how long has it been going on?
Jed, do you know that answer?
I don't know exactly, but I do know. Let's grab. I have it on my desk here. So
there you go.
So the lug nuts don't quite stick together the way they once did, but I have a 2013 lug nut award here. So we've existed since at least 2012, maybe 2011. So I guess that's a decade. So go team.
I think it was early 2010.
Early 2010.
Had the perfect one.
I think Steve Vetter also had some form of a Latin user group before this as well, too.
And so
I think it was much longer before then. I think it was probably 2009 because I was working at Boston Scientific and I left there in 2010, and I went to quite a few as a Boston Scientific employee. So it's a long time ago.
Do we have a survey question about who's attended a LabVIEW user group at Broadway Pizza? Because that was the original one, right? Is that where was there someplace before Broadway Pizza? I think Broadway Pizza is where it started. I'm not positive.
I thought you had one or two more venues before that.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of them at Broadway, many years.
And then we ran out of room. So, but yeah, we've met pretty regularly 4 times a year. Every once in a while, 3 times a year when I failed to plan one. But now we have a team that helps prevent that from happening. And so, yeah, I guess we're in somewhere in year 12, 13, something like that. We've eaten a lot of pizza over the years, occasionally better food. So,
Well, and before that, we had Peter Anderson and I started a user group in 1994, I think. And our first meeting was in a hotel, the South something or another over in Bloomington or Edina or something. And we had an ice storm that day, and we still had over 100 people attend the meeting, even though Department of Transportation saying stay off the roads.
Wow.
We had 140 people show up, so I thought that was pretty sensational.
Awesome. That's awesome. If there's anything I love, and there's many things I love about our LabVIEW community, it's that we are passionate, sometimes crazy, but certainly passionate. So along the lines of that passion and craziness, I'm curious, who thinks that they have worked in the oldest version of LabVIEW? Or another way of saying that is, what's the oldest version of LabVIEW anyone here has worked in?
2.0.
2.0. Okay, you win.
you can hit the comments if you want to chime in without unmuting. So,
I think I worked in a version like 1.8 or something like that back in college.
Interpreted?
I think I used 1.0. It was a version before you got an if statement.
Oh, man. Okay.
That's when you use chisel and stone to program, right?
Right.
To draw your diagrams?
Can you imagine?
This
Yeah, I think
was
I've used-
still DOS days.
Yeah.
It wasn't compiled till 2.0. Before that, it was just interpreted.
Back in the bad old days of programming, when you actually had to type words out for the computer to understand versus the new amazingness that is LabVIEW. And anybody who's stuck in the old way, it's terrible.
On punch cards.
Punch cards, there you go.
I was using it on a compact portable, nicknamed Luggable, about 10-inch by 10-inch by 20-inch package with a keyboard that folded out.
But it had a handle, so it was portable.
Yes.
That was the definition back then. Could weigh 200 pounds, but if it had a handle, it was portable.
My grandfather was around. He'd have put that on casters, rolled it around.
yes, the IBM knockoff of the Compact was the first computer at our house. So it was. I think I've gone back and looked. It weighed 46 pounds. And it had the 2 floppy drives, which I think was an extra like $300 for the second floppy drive. No hard drive. So.
What is that adjusted for inflation?
Yeah, it's like $1,000 floppy drive at this point.
So now I'm curious at the other end of the spectrum. If we've got folks who've been around since like LabVIEW 1.0, I got here in LabVIEW 7 Express, which was a marketing don't start. What's the who's the most, I guess for lack of a better term, who's the most inexperienced? Which is a terrible way of asking that question. Right?
Who's the worst at LabVIEW here?
That's right. So
Who is the freshest perspective of LabVIEW? How about that?
Right. That's better.
We often have students or new members.
Very cool.
Josh, how old are you now? I'll call you out, Josh. I know you're there.
I'm 25.
Right
Got it.
on.
So Josh has been using it.
Inexperienced, but
Go ahead.
I've been using it since 2013.
Okay. Did anybody here get their start as a result of LabVIEW Community Edition, which was 2020? And I'm guessing the answer is no. Yeah. Has anybody here not used Community Edition?
Oh, I think a lot of people. Actually, Chris, we have a whole section where we're going to have a direct poll survey going. So I think that is a perfect situation where we should just add a lot of these questions in as we go.
Perfect.
So let's get this kicked off here, and then as more questions come to mind, we can do the survey. So cool. So moving right along here. So we were talking about the team that helps make this happen. So yeah, so Jed used to do a lot of organizing, and then he kind of handed it off to the community. So this is our community team here. We've got Bruce, who I believe you worked with, Chris, in order to get here. We've got Jomar, Eric Schleeper, Steve Vetter, Tom Brass, who's also presenting, and myself. So we all work together in order to make these happen and try to organize with people to get presentations, venues, so on and so forth. The venue part has been pretty easy over the last year, but we'll actually have some news on that here in just a second. Our NI team is Jed Rethford, helping out with enterprise software, and Tom Pollack, who provided us this link. He's actually out golfing right now, I believe, so feel free to give him a hard time about that later. And then Nielsen Rojas, he's also an account manager that can help us out from time to time as well.
Nielsen's not really assigned to us anymore, though.
No, but he will still help from time to time, so I think it's still worth mentioning him in case people need a point of contact. So Q3 meeting, we officially have approval to do this in person again. So this is a pretty big deal. If you guys recall, Q3 is often at the Emerson Pavilion, and that has the giant grill set up, and Weston has agreed to grill out for us. And so 16th of September, mark your calendars. We're going to be at the pavilion. We're going to get some fresh air. We're going to have grilled steaks and whatever else Weston decides is delicious, and it always is. And we're working on improved sound options. So we know that each time we get a little bit better at this, and so we're really going to go gung-ho on trying to make sure that everybody can actually hear things over all the noise of the grills and the fans and everything. So we're really looking forward to seeing everybody in person again, and it should be both good content and delicious. So definitely spread the word on that one.
What's the weather like in September?
It can be a pretty wide range, but usually it's like in the 70s.
I'm in.
Okay, do it. You should come.
September 16th, book your ticket.
Yeah.
Like any day in Minnesota, it's anywhere between 0 and 100 centigrade.
I mean, you can probably drop that a little bit.
Yeah, okay. Negative 40 and 100.
There you go.
The light rail will not be complete, so you can't take that there.
What was that?
The station is right next door to it.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. We'll soon have public transit to the in the 2022 Emerson Pavilion meeting. We'll have public transit to the meeting.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep.
Awesome. In order to get the updates for this Q3 meeting, make sure that you're on our mailing list. So if you're not on it, just email me at info@choose-mc.com or talk to anybody you know that's already coming to the user group, and they might be on it as well. And so you can just reply to any existing mailing list email, and it'll get to me, and I'll make sure that you get added. So definitely make sure to subscribe, so make sure that you get that info. All right. Last time we did direct poll survey, and people had a lot of fun, so we're doing it again. Pull out your phones or scan the QR. Give people a few minutes. All right. So.
This is pretty slick.
But the questions that have lots of answers, you might have to scroll down to find the vote button, by the way.
Yes, good point. Good point. And I am trying to remember where here. This is what I'm after. 1 second. I want to show you guys the results as we go through. My bad. I forgot about this important piece. But I see answers coming in. We got 21 so far. There's 29 people in this meeting, so definitely keep participating, everybody. Let's see here real quick. Here we go. This is what I'm after. Okay. Sorry for the delay. Cool. So, lots of NI partners. And besides that, we've got a lot of people, electronics, biomed, healthcare, HVAC, manufacturing, and other. Actually kind of surprised there aren't as many healthcare this time. Something going on with all the medical device companies today?
They're golfing.
Everybody's golfing. That's reasonable. All right, let's do next. So what we're going to do here is a lot of these are repeats from last time, and we're going to kind of keep track of these as we go from quarter to quarter, and then in Q4 we'll see if there are any trends with anything. So we think that might be pretty interesting to see. All right, numbers coming in. And we can dynamically add questions too, so as we get more answers here, if you've got a question you want to ask the group, by all means pipe up and we'll add it at the end there.
You're going to need a new column there for, like, say, greater than 20.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm curious. All right.
So I guess this answers your question, Chris. Not a whole lot of brand new users to me.
True story. Oh, I'd love to ask the following question. How often do you download a community-based toolkit or reuse library per year? And maybe download's wrong, but we'll say use. How often do you use a community-based toolkit per year? Ish.
So, I mean, use and download is pretty different. So,
granted. So I would say
download.
Yeah, let's go with download. Sure.
You could say use unique, so it's not just like they're reusing the same one.
Right.
Which kind of gets to the download.
Yeah.
Use a new.
All right, we'll do that. We'll say how many unique community toolkits do you use in a year? How about that?
I love that.
2. And in the meantime, let's jump to the next question.
2021. Wait, we're saying how many hours per week do we use LabVIEW 2021, or just how much are you on LabVIEw?
In 2021, what's the average number of hours per week that you use LabVIEW?
Got it.
Of any version.
Of any version.
Wait, 2021 hasn't even been released yet.
Yeah, it would be beta, right? So I think that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right. Maybe it's been. Did they? Oh, no, never mind.
Okay. a good distribution. I'm guessing the 4.2% may or may not be the LabVIEW consultants. And then everybody else uses it as part of their job. All right, cool.
We're getting good participation. We're up to 24 out of 29 people, and if I'm not mistaken, Will, you're 2 of them. So unless you're voting or voting twice, we're actually...
That's a good point. I am not voting twice, so we only need 4 more people. I am participating.
We're doing well here.
All right, next. Average hours per week, people are still working from home.
Oh, wow.
I'm actually really curious about... Okay, so it was... Okay, so I'm just looking up what it used to be last week, or last quarter, and same amount less than 5, but definite increases on the 6 to 20. So people are moving back to the office, so that's cool.
Did I just lose Will's audio, or was that me?
I can see you.
You can still hear me?
I hear Will fine.
Likewise.
Cool. All right, next. Pandemic's impact on your business.
You should have a neutral option on this one.
Yeah.
Let's force people to choose.
Pick a side.
Pick a side.
There's no neutral. Even if your business was exactly the same, it was either worse or better working from home.
Unless you were already working from home.
Right.
Okay, so overall pretty positive. I suppose we work in technology, so that kind of makes a lot of sense. But that's good to see that overall people are feeling that in general it's been good. Looks like there are some that are bad, which is too bad. But honestly, I was kind of expecting the pandemic to have a worse impact overall.
Of course, if you're talking about the impact on the business versus the impact on me personally working, that's a little different.
Right. Yeah. This is on your business. So.
And of course, with any survey, you've got sample bias. So you've got people attending the user group. If they lost their job and now they're working in a completely different industry or something, they may not be attending the user group anymore. That kind of thing.
True. Definitely true.
That's a good point. We have a lot of people that are no longer in the industry because of the pandemic.
Mm. Well, that's a good point.
Nice. I'm just too curious. So last time it was overwhelming. People thought Q3. And now we're seeing a lot more boosts, Q1, Q2. But also more for Q4 and after 2021. So.
I thought of another question.
Yeah.
Yes or no? You are encouraged. No. Would you say you're encouraged or discouraged about the trajectory of LabVIEW adoption in general?
All right, it's been added. Cool. Yeah, this is definitely a wider distribution on upturn in the economy, so that's really promising. So people are definitely seeing improvements earlier than expected from last quarter.
I have to see if you can split screen your results in the back next time.
Yeah. I'll have to do that. Now I can just make up whatever trends I want. Cool. So this question is a little bit different than last time because last time it was, are you vaccinated or intend to be vaccinated? But this is great. Tons of people. Cool. I think Minnesota is one of the best rates of vaccination, actually. So good job, team.
We're in the top 20 anyway.
Top 20? Well, we're not giving out $1 million awards, so.
Yeah.
What's up with that? Here we go. So this is kind of the same question. We can move through this one pretty quickly. All right. And where's that 24? You know who you are. We'll move on. All right. So are you guys, one question is, are you familiar with NI Connect? So NI Connect, so we're not doing NI Week this year. There's a virtual conference called NI Connect that's happening in August. And so it's all from the comfort of your own home. But it's supposed to cover a lot of the same things that NI Week does. But it's going to be shorter. It's going to have less content overall. Chris, do you have more details by any chance?
A little bit. So I've been in charge of the community aspect. So let's say the LabVIEW Champions and CLA is coming in to present. And at Connect, there will be none of that, which I'm like, that's a bummer. Hopefully that gets back on track when NI Week returns. To the best of my knowledge, there have been a number of smaller, not webinars, but like industry-focused presentations over the last few weeks, and I think those were meant to augment NI Connect, to the best of my knowledge. But from the community perspective, I don't know that we're going to have that much of a presence this year.
Okay. Jed, do you know more about it?
No, other than that. Oh. Somebody want to jump
This is Eric. I was going to say that I know that registration is open for NI Connect if you want to get in and register so that you get all the updates.
Do you want to post that LinkedIn link, Eric, in the chat?
Well, I'll see if I can get Luke to do it since I'm on his computer. We're all watching from the main room in the office.
Oh, okay.
But I think it's just connect.ni.com.
Cool. All right. Similar question.
So, side note, I could probably throw a rock and hit the Austin Convention Center from where I live.
Oh,
so
cool.
Literally about, can't throw a rock 750 feet, if only. But yeah, it's real close by.
So how many people stay with you during NI Week?
I only have 600 square feet, so none.
Okay. I was going to say, I bet you got a lot of requests.
You are literally looking at half of my living space right here. The other half is on the other side of that wall.
Okay. Cool. All right. 47%. Not bad. We're definitely going to need to have a Buffalo Billiards night.
Yeah. I really do miss NI Week a lot. The absence of it in 2020 was very much felt.
Yeah, absolutely. We got 25. We're up to 30. Welcome, whoever just joined. All right. New question. What is your reaction to NI's move to using distributors?
You guys are asking all the friendly questions.
Well, these are all the main changes that are happening, so we want to make sure that people are aware and that we kind of know how we feel about it. So it actually looks like there's a lot of people that aren't aware of this. So Jed, would you mind offering a description of kind of what's been happening with the distributors?
Sure. So in January, NI started to make our products available through distributors. And so in the U.S., which is the people that probably care, our products became available through Newark. I guess Newark operates around the world under a couple different names. But in the U.S., I think Newark's the one that you're most likely to be familiar with, and also through Test Force. So we're trying to make more products available in more ways. In particular, I think I know that from talking to a lot of people, Newark, a lot of people do business with Newark already for other products. So, you should expect to see, identical pricing from Newark, and in some, and they have a very large team of people to handle and fulfill orders. So, shouldn't, if you want to place your order directly with Newark, no problem with that at all. NI.com is also. We continue to try to improve the experience on NI.com to make things more available that way as well.
DigiKey is also a distributor.
What's that?
DigiKey is also a distributor.
DigiKey is also a distributor. That one's been going on for longer. You're right. Thank you. So a lot of stuff heading like north to Thief River Falls and north of us a little bit and then back out again. So all of those are ways that you can. So I know in particular Newark and DigiKey are pretty widely known, and while DigiKey I don't believe has a technical sales staff, Newark and Test Force both do have technical sales representatives. So those are options. So I see there was a question there. I'll look at that in just a second here. But then I guess if you should have been if you're working with, if the person that you're working with has changed, there should have been some notification of that went out earlier this year. But if not, you can still ping myself or Tom or Nielsen Rojas, and we can help point you in the right direction as well. So for many of you, nothing, things may not have changed as well, as Tom and I are still around. I will go and find the question there. Pretty much everything is being sold through distributors. Custom contracts, custom services and custom software contracts like enterprise agreements are still all directly through NI. But pretty much everything else is sold through distributors now. So. In other parts of the world, I guess we moved our entire business to distributors. Like if you work with someone in Brazil or Australia, we had our local distributors hired a lot of the NI staff, and became easier ways of handling some of the trade compliance things. So if you have operations in those countries, you might see some of that as well.
Cool. Thanks for the info.
Sure.
Next question. This one's just oddly satisfying to ask.
Oh man.
I'm abstaining.
Yeah.
You can't abstain if you can't have neutrals.
You must pick a side. Oh man. Can I have 10 seconds for a request? For NI.com? Okay, brace yourself. I would love to start the programming experience through the purchasing experience. I want to graphically assemble my system and then import that graphical representation into LabVIEW.
So tell us more about what exactly that means. Does that mean automatically create your DACMX tasks with the CDAC you just bought, or what does that mean?
That means I want to design I want to drop down my computer. So graphically, I drop down my computer. I specify a version of LabVIEW and DAC. I connect it to a CDAC chassis. I specify a version of real-time and FPGA on my PC, connect it to a CDAC chassis. I specify all the different modules that I want. I ask, is all of this compatible? Then I hit buy. I want that diagram imported into LabVIEW with my project already set up with those targets and already set up with all of those modules so that I can just start programming.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. I got more, but that's it.
Awesome. Yeah. I think they should listen to that idea. Is that already on the idea exchange?
I don't think so.
Yeah, you should there. But I think you definitely need to make sure that it's like very clearly explained.
I'm looking to see what NI employees are on this call.
Yeah, Eric
and,
is here.
There you go.
Hi, Eric.
Eric or Darren, I don't know that you guys want to own that idea, but there you go.
It's not like we haven't tried configuration wizards before. It's just that the practical implementation never comes off as well as the idea of the workflow.
Yeah.
But just kind of configuring a project that has your stuff in it, that seems very doable.
I would vote for getting some fundamental things working correctly on the website before we try to...
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Touch the hot spot. You asked for it.
All right. I'll go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say, I'd be curious of asking that same question as it relates to our distributors' websites, because what we found, one of the reasons I linked those two things together is one of the reasons that we started partnering with these distributors is they often have more sophisticated and better workflows on their web interfaces, and so they're actually easier for some people to work with. So that was a large part of what we were looking at when we were evaluating those partnerships.
Okay.
Because next time you can ask the question about whether people are currently doing business with Newark or DigiKey already.
Yeah. Yeah, we're taking a lot of time on the survey, which is really great information, but we're going to have to...
We should probably move, or maybe next time we can split it between the two presentations also.
Yeah, that's good. Good idea. Cool. Okay, so we've got quite a wide variety here. So a lot of people are still on older versions of LabVIEW, but we're moving forward. All right, let's jump in. We're kind of moving into our new additional questions here, so we're almost to the end.
We don't have to. We'll figure it out.
First things first, in case this may or may not apply in the future.
Oh.
A lot of people have their own personal pizza places. We might have to have a actual.
All right. I want others. I want other comments. I want others in the comments.
Yeah, good plan. Add it to the chat if you answered other. All right. Next. Looks like a lot of people like Devani's, Caroni's, then Equal, Green Mills, Papa John's. Cool. All right. Should we keep doing polls like this?
Oh, yeah. This is really cool.
Awesome.
Well, we can continue. Actually, I guess with phones, you can continue doing this even while we're providing poor audio and steaks next month or next quarter. Better audio and steaks next quarter.
Cool. Well, this is great. Great. People are still getting a lot out of this, so we'll keep going until we get a lot of no's. So awesome to hear. So how many unique community toolkits do you use in a year?
Where's the zero option?
Yeah, you don't have 0 as an option.
Oh, no. Let me see if I can add that real quick.
Anybody who votes 0, I'm glad you're going to be hearing my presentation.
I was just so in the zone on, let me see if this auto updates. Yes, it worked.
Fascinating. Love it. Virtual bench. I don't know that I remember what that is.
Virtual Bench is Virtual Bench is 2 products in NI's history. 30 years ago, it was a simplified data logger. And then about 10 years ago, it was a all-in-one desktop instrument that has like 4 instruments in one.
That's right. That's right.
We like to reuse names.
All right.
On that thread, the Ford Maverick is coming back because why not turn a coupe into a pickup truck? It makes sense.
All right. Are you encouraged or discouraged by the trajectory of LabVIEW adoption in general? Okay, it's even split. Guess we'll see what happens.
There's a 26th voter you could figure out.
Yeah. All right, last question. Of those using distributor websites, are they easy to work with?
So this is one where you don't vote if you don't use them.
Yes. So we probably won't see everybody vote this time. All right. So 2/3 yes. That's promising. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, if there's other questions that people want to ask, feel free to email me, and then I'll make sure that they get added. And, I reserve the right to pick and choose, but we'll definitely try to answer as many people's questions as possible. Let's move on to our presentations. Tom, I'm thinking you should go first because if something you say comes up as an option for a toolkit, I'd like Chris to pipe up. And so, Tom, do you want to grab the presentation and get started?
Okay. Or you see my screen, or it said
not.
No.
I asked for the request. And it said
rather than your data being in a cloud, you're in a cloud.
There it is.
There you go. Now
All
I can see the user group chat with pizza recommendations.
Let me,
Chris, when you fly here, you've got all the pizza recommendations you need.
Yes.
Oops. That's not what I want. This is what I want. There we go. All right. So, yeah, my name is Tom Brass. I am the senior software engineer at Circuit Check, and my presentation today is about dynamic user interfaces and other fun things. So first, a little bit about Circuit Check. So we are the leader in electronic test industry, or at least that's what our website says. We have over 250 employees with operations in the United States, Canada, and elsewhere in the world, but we are headquartered here in Maple Grove. The department I work for, test system engineering, specialized in custom test solutions. So we build custom production tests as well as design verification, that type of thing. As you probably can guess by our name, a lot of our tests involve testing circuit boards. There's a lot of different circuit boards out there, as I'm finding out, since I've worked here for just over a year. And also we use a lot of LabVIEW and TestStand. So the thing I'm going to talk about involving dynamic user interfaces also involves object-oriented programming. So if you haven't used object-oriented programming, it's basically a programming paradigm that's based on objects, which are like a combination of data and functions. Objects are organized as classes, and those classes can be hierarchical or whatever. So you basically have a parent, and then you have children classes, and then the children inherit properties from the parent. And when I show the code, I can show a little bit of that as well. And also the great thing about using objects is that you can do dynamic dispatch, which means you basically specify to run the parent code, but then while you're running your code, it actually, if there was like a child version of that code, it will run that instead for whatever child you specify. So that's part of what makes it dynamic. Object-oriented programming can be used for a lot of things. One way that people use it is for hardware abstraction layer. So you basically in your code you can specify generic hardware such as talking to a power supply or a DMM without specifying the specific hardware, and then you use child classes that are specific for specific hardware. Nice thing about that then is later on if you decide you want to switch to different hardware, it's a lot easier to switch out. And then also it's used to implement different design patterns. So if you say Google design patterns, there's a lot of design patterns out there that people have created for other languages, and some people have implemented those in LabVIEW using object-oriented programming. And also, again, it's one way that you can reuse code as well. And also then adding additional features that you might not have originally thought about, but makes it easier to add. What in general makes for dynamic code. In LabVIEW, object-oriented programming is value-based as opposed to reference-based. That means objects are kind of treated like clusters. So if you're on the block diagram, if you split your wire in two, you now suddenly have two objects. And then for creating the classes, you do that in projects. Again, I'll show all this in my code. And the methods are basically VIs in your classes. And then also in your VIs, we are using an object. The wire, you can use an unbundle or bundle by name to actually get that data that you have inside of your object. So, and also I can show real quick too how you can actually use your LabVIEW code in TestStand for using objects. So that was just a little sidebar, but I'll show that. So yeah, I think now is a good time just to switch over to my code. So let me first show running the code. This is just a simple little demo where I call it a battery board tester. Just make a pretend that this is testing a board that has a battery on it. And so maybe you would start by charging the board, and then after that you would maybe read some voltages. Once that's done, then maybe you discharge the board. Just showing in this case 3 different tests, and in this screen here it's updating depending on what test you use. And what I'm using for this is actually a subpanel, which is basically it's like what it sounds like. It's a panel inside your code where you can run a VI with a user interface, rather than, say, having a bunch of tabs for different user interfaces. This way you can call this and add things as later on without having to rewrite all the code. So, like, for example, here I've got a variety of classes. I've got a test step class, which is my parent class. And in there I've got a variety of VIs that can be either called by the children classes, or even you can override some of those VIs. And so then I've got, you saw the 3 tests that are running the charge, the discharge, and the measure voltages. Those are child classes. And so just to kind of show how that was called. So let's see here. And this code I'll post later too. So one of the things, first of all, is to load the test list. So let me pull up that real quick. I have a file here which just lists the various tests, in which case there's 3 tests. So this code will read that text file to get the list, and then it looks for those classes. So I've got looks at the parent class and basically pulls off its get the path of that parent class, and then they manipulate that to find the directory where I have all the classes in, and then it just rebuilds a new the class path for the different tests that I have listed. And then this here actually, you can grab the default value and then put it to the type of the parent class. So what I get out of this is an array of what looks like an array of just the parent classes, but in reality it's actually all the different child classes. And so then when I run a test, I can basically this will basically call that child class, find the test name here for the VI that is what you just see displayed on the screen, and then they send it to update the info panel here. And so I'll basically dynamically call that VI, populate the control here with the queue, so that way I can call that queue in the code, and then I just run the code, and I can show you then what looks like one of those VIs. It's like for the child. Here's just a VI where I'm just generating data here, just fake data displayed on the screen, and then I update whether it passed or failed, and then this is actually calling the parent class, which waits a second so you can see what happens on the screen, and then sends to update the test results on the in this queue. So basically that is the next step, and then it updates the results and then gets the next step, and so on and so forth. So to kind of demonstrate how this can be dynamic, right now it just had the 3 tests, and it kind of just ended without really doing, it wasn't very obvious that it actually ended. So I'm going to just add to my list here the report, and I got to see what I called that just so I'm, I just called the report. All right, so I'll add this, and then if I run my test here without changing any of the code, now if I run it, oh shoot, I probably had that VI open, didn't I? Oh, that doesn't like that. Okay. Here, let me close this. So it got confused because I had that screen still open. But there we go. So now if we run the test here, you'll see the 3 tests I had before. And then they'll actually display a report with a pass fail. And this actually was grabbing the pass from each test. So you can see there's updated time here as well. So this is without changing any of the code. All I did was add the new class, which I have right here. So I created this beforehand, but it was just basically all I do is have to add this new class, which all it does is display on the screen the report. And all I did was I have a functional global that stores all the results. So it's just grabbing the results from that and determining if it passed or failed. The other thing you may notice is when I ran this, it didn't add that test to the test results because it's not a test result, it's just a report. So how I got around that was actually in the updating the test results, I have here, you can see how this brings up the screen because I actually overwrote. I used this one for most of the tests, with just as the test results or builds the line for the list of tests. But if for the report, I actually overwrite it to do nothing. So that's how I kind of avoid adding that test, which is the report, so it doesn't show up as a test. And so let's see. So you basically can add then later on if you find out you need to add a new test, you wouldn't have to edit your code to add it. Edit your main code to do the test. All you'd have to do is add a new class, and you may actually say somebody decides they want to add something completely different to your test. Like, for example, let's say as part of OSHA standards, you are required to remind the operator to get up and exercise every so often. We could then do that by, should be able to add a new exercise class here. And then we'll add that to our and hopefully this will work. Now if we run the test here, and let's see, oh, here we go. So let's see if we can skip this here. All right. I can't actually skip the ad, but anyway, you get the point here, that you could display some sort of video. So this will stop here in a bit.
Oh, interesting.
Anyway, I'll probably okay. So okay, I'm just going to kill this here. All right, there. I think that'll kill it. Sorry about that. The problem with YouTube, you get all the fun ads there. But if you were to do this on your own, you'd have your own custom video that you could play. But the point is that when you create your tester, you probably didn't think about playing a video or anything like that. But by having dynamic user interfaces, you can add things that you wouldn't may have thought of, but somebody else in your company has thought of. So, let's see, and then so I already talked about that. All right, so I guess that's kind of a short presentation, but mainly I want to spend more time just opening it up for questions and discussion and that kind of thing.
Hey, Tom, can you show how to make one class inherit from another and maybe show like the LabVIEW class hierarchy?
Absolutely. So, for example, I'll just click on the properties for this exercise one. Under inheritance, you see it's showing up under test here. So if I change here, here I can specify different classes. So if I wanted this exercise to be actually part of a report, I can make it inherit from the report. And then anything that any VI say that the report VI calls that I didn't specifically specify for exercise, it would then instead call the report version of it. And so you can create, a much more complex hierarchy this way. Say for a hardware abstraction layer, you can have a top layer of just instrument that maybe have some VIs like open and close, but then you have child classes of power supply, DMM, oscilloscope. Then under each of those classes, you can have specific classes of like an NI DMM, like NI scope or a scope from my Keysight or whatever hardware you might actually use in your facility. And one other thing I should do real quick is I had mentioned test stands as well. So real quick, I can show how you would call a object in test stand for those people who use test stand. So I'll just simply add an action here. So if you use the test stand, normally you would specify a VI to call. So I could let me see if I can pull one up here. Let's say I'll just call this one here. So you might normally call something like this, and then you'd have your inputs and outputs. But this would only call this specific version of that that VI, regardless of what you had input as your reference. So instead, under VI call here, you can actually do class member call. and then you can specify a project, like a test project, and then, okay, so hold on here. Find my, this is what I want. Open that up. And now it has the different classes. So for example, if I select that report class, now I can actually select the update test results. And instead of, like in this case, I'm going to call in the reports. Instead, if I call the test step class itself, now because I'm calling as a class member call, whatever object I input here under test step in will determine which version to call. So it's kind of similar to how you call a object in LabVIEW, but in this case with test stand. So that's all I had to present for test stand, but I just wanted to show that because it was one thing before this year I had no idea that you could do that. So anything else?
Anybody have any questions for Tom?
Was he going to show the hierarchy?
Yeah. Here we can, the class hierarchy. So here is my, I've got two classes here. One of them was actually from the Delacorp library, Q message handler. But then this is the test step one that I was using, and then all the child ones like the charge, discharge, measure voltage, report, and then the newest one, exercise.
So if I was to kind of summarize what you were talking about here, looking at this, you can see that all those 5 different classes all inherit from the test step. And so the idea would be that you program essentially only using the test step VIs, but then you're able to dynamically change the behavior of your program based on what object you actually send down the wire. Would that be?
Yep, that's right. And then the other part of it was by using subpanels, then you can actually display, well, subpanels are nice for displaying within your code, within like one screen. If you didn't want to do that, if you just wanted a pop-up screen, then you wouldn't even need to use that. Then you could dynamically have a different pop-up depending on which class you're calling. So that's another way that you could have dynamic user interfaces.
Cool. Great. Thanks a lot, Tom.
Sure.
I think somebody has their hand raised. Roland McCarty?
Oh, go ahead, Roland.
Hi, Tom. I always enjoy looking at your code. I noticed something interesting. You're using DQMH, NQer, DQer. Could you explain why?
So, yeah, let me pull up here. The design pattern that I use was basically like it's for a queued message handler with gosh, I can't think of the name of it, but producer consumer. Thank you. So I have one loop which handles the user interface or the user input. In this case, there's just the one button, or then also if I do a panel close.
Sure.
And then that sends the message onto this queue, which then actually runs the different tasks. And this actually then updates the user interface with this third loop. So anywhere within this loop, if I need to send something to the user interface, I can just put it on the queue, and that'll get displayed. And the reason for doing it this way is it allows, for example, while you're running a test, it'll still handle user interface. So say I had another button for pause, for example, that this loop would still handle that, and they could basically add onto the queue to say pause. So then when this is finished running, the test that's running, the next thing it would do then is, if I put the pause at the head of the queue, it would then pause right away.
So, Tom, is there a particular reason that you chose to use the DQMH queue implementation versus just calling the queue directly from like the LabVIEW palette?
Part of why I like using this is that it has some nice little features. It has handling of errors, for example. It also it already builds the message and message data in there. So, for example, when I'm done running the test, I put the queue or put the object in as data for when I call this update test results, so that I can use that data here right away. So that's a common way of building a queued message handler, is having a command and then a variant for data.
Sure.
And so this one's already has that built in there, so that's why I like using it.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Great.
Any other questions about whatever you want to ask me?
You know, Tom, if there's a place that somebody might want to learn more about object-oriented programming, where they might go?
I know there is some things on the NI website, and I think they discuss it in some of the classes as well. But I'm trying to think of if anyone else has like a good suggestion on where they've.
I got one. So for any questions, even I get really excited about this. All right. So for any questions, certainly ni.com is it's an okay place. However, if you've never seen the LabVIEW wiki, you're welcome. Right? So go to labviewwiki.org, and it is the community maintained, owned, and updated wiki for all things LabVIEW, test stand, name it. And there's an entire segment on object-oriented programming with links to common object-oriented programming articles. So if you've not ever seen the LabVIEW wiki before, you're in for a treat. And like I said, it's community-based. So if you find something you want to add to it or something you want to update, have a field day.
Please check the chat. Chris has already linked you in the chat.
So there you go. That's the LabViewWiki.org.
Right. So do a search for OOP.
Here we go.
Check it out.
So there you
go. Lots of design patterns, external resources.
Right. Yeah. And in fact, if you scroll down to kind of the middle, one of the patterns that you showed there, Tom, is actually called the factory pattern. So that's that middle one where you load, check it out.
So like I'd mentioned about using different design patterns, and some of them I end up using without even realizing they're the design pattern.
Yeah.
So the nice thing too then is you can then do a search on that design pattern and find a lot of non-LabVIEW information, but or language independent information on those design patterns.
For sure.
I actually have a book on design patterns that was written for Java, but yet was also very applicable to LabVIEW.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. All right. Any last questions for Tom? Cool. Well, Tom, thank you very much for presenting, sharing the info.
Sure.
Why don't we take a quick 5 minutes, give people a break, grab something to drink, snack, whatever you need to do, and right a little bit after 5:51, Chris, we will begin your presentation.
I dig it. I look forward to it. And if anybody has anything you want to talk about in the meantime, I'm not going anywhere.
I need a quick break, but I'll be right back.
Tom, what do you feel like is one of the biggest challenges you faced when beginning to learn object-oriented programming?
Probably the biggest thing that was a little confusing to me, because I had not had any training on object-oriented programming. It was after my time, I guess, when I was in college.
Sure.
So the one comment that somebody made that really helped me to understand was the talking about thinking of objects as superclusters. That because in LabVIEW it's done by value rather than by reference, I think that kind of really helped me to kind of wrap my head around it.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the one thing that I have still struggled with is making duplicate classes that are basically very similar.
Right.
Like it'd be nice to, if I could just basically take a class and just say, turn this into a class template, and then reuse that for other classes, because I find I'm creating a lot of the very similar VIs.
Sure.
And some of that I've figured out I can get around by making it more hierarchical.
Uh-huh.
I love that word.
Hierarchical. Yep. Have you used LabVIEW 2020 yet? Or I forget, were we just in LabVIEw 2020? I don't remember.
I was at 19. I haven't used 20 yet.
So the thing that you just wanted is introduced in 2020 by virtue of a construct in the language called interfaces.
Okay.
So with an interface, and with it's 5:48. Okay, so we got 3 minutes. So the notion of an interface is, instead of considering the object and what it offers to the caller, you consider the caller and what it needs from the object. So what I mean is, independent of the object, you define a series of VIs that application depends on. Any object that satisfies that design pattern can get plugged in there. It doesn't have to inherit.
Okay.
So this idea of an interface is a generic way of letting any object that satisfies that series of API function calls to plug in right there. So in your case, you said that a lot of your classes look the same, like they have the same set of VIs. Well, that common set of VIs could get turned into an interface. And then any object that has at least that set of functions can satisfy that interface. So it becomes...
Do you have like a tangible example, Chris?
Yeah, no, not off the top of my head. I was afraid you were going to ask.
I'm trying to remember what the demo was when it was introduced. Wasn't it like a torquing?
Yeah, so Stephen Loftus-Mercer put together a really good presentation, and the idea is you might have tool. I'm not going to do this justice. I believe that there's a fair amount of detail on the LabVIEW wiki if you look up interfaces. And also, I'm sure, there's NI Week presentations, which, by the way, all the NI Week community presentations are on the LabVIEW wiki, at least for the last 4 or 5 years. So interfaces, wave of the future. It's good stuff.
One example of an interface would be clonable. Like if a class is tagged was clonable, it's forced to provide a method to clone itself.
So the last couple of letters you just used, a bull. So I want my class to be viewable, like I want to be able to put it into subpanels, but I also want it to be cloneable or serializable. Able means it's like a characteristic or a trait. Interfaces allow for a class to not have to inherit in order to get ability. And I'm butchering this, but yeah, it's fun stuff to research. It's one of the reasons why I was sad to see so few of us using 2020 is because interfaces were only introduced in 2020, and I get it. Like, turns out one of the downsides of using LabVIEW is up-compiling is hard. It's costly. And there's advantages and disadvantages. Anyways, I could talk about that all day and all night. Right, if the class implements the interface. Oh gosh, there's so much to talk about there. All right, I can jump in. Should I start presenting?
I'm going to try to share real quick.
Okay, go.
Okay, this is almost impossible to read, but this is that example where you have your object and then you have a tool and you have a lever. And so what you do is you implement the functionality of a lever as the interface. And then even though this prying tool, for example, this prying tool is also an interface. And so then what you can do is you can have different objects actually inherit from multiple interfaces and gain that capability without needing to duplicate across multiple different hierarchies. So here, for example, a screwdriver is a rotating tool and a lever tool. A pry bar is a prying tool only, right? So you can kind of pick and choose what capabilities you're inheriting rather than needing to implement them all at the top level just to make sure that they're available to the right pieces.
Oh, man. There's some really good stuff I could talk about there.
So, sorry, just because we were talking about it, thought I'd...
That's good stuff, man.
Cool. Why don't you jump into your presentation?
I can do this. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Given the seniority and the experience level of this user group, I'm going to kind of push through the beginning and get through some to more meaty topics. Plus, I also like conversation a lot. So by all means, feel free to ask questions, raise a hand, and we'll go from there. So yeah, my name is Chris Cellino. I am a certified or a LabVIEW champion, a certified LabVIEW architect. I am the president and founder of the LabVIEW community's first and so far only, to the best of my knowledge, a nonprofit organization called G Central. We'll talk about that in just a second. And I'm a project engineer at DMC. We'll also talk about that in just a second. Anyways, title this, Reuse Code, How to Look Like a Hero. And as I was writing this presentation, I realized I don't necessarily like that title because it makes it sound like we're putting on a show. What I'm going to suggest is reuse code isn't just a way to behave like a hero, but I think it's a way to actually be a hero. So that's going to be the point of this entire presentation. So let me start off with, I like asking questions. Do you ever feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders? Well, yeah. As a developer, there's tons of pressure on you. And developer, architect, whatever, solution provider, the weight of the world is on your shoulders because you're asked to deliver some sort of a quality solution, whatever quality means, in a timely fashion. And by the way, that solution might be to a problem no one has ever solved before. Oh, and by the way, can you make that solution easily adaptable as requirements change and you release your software out into the wild? Oh, and can you make that software easy to follow so that people on your team can pick up after you or contribute to your work? Oh, and can you do that cheaply? Oh, and yesterday. right? So are you for real? Basically, can you just, be a hero? Where a hero does amazing things that seems impossible in service of others. That's what's being asked of us. And it turns out impossible things, well, they're actually impossible. So let's not kid ourselves. But here's the good news. Things that seem impossible become possible when you don't work in isolation. So somebody comes to you and asks you to implement a solution. The good news is they're not necessarily asking you to implement it. They're just asking you to deliver it. Maybe you reuse somebody else's work. Maybe somebody else has already solved this out in the wild. I don't think that your end user cares. All they care about is getting the end solution, but however you choose to provide that. So when you work in isolation, you're putting the weight of the world on your shoulders. Now, why do I say all this? Because I've been put in these situations beforehand where I've been asked to deliver what seems like impossible. So let me tell you about some of the circumstances I've found myself in. We'll start at the bottom. Back all the way in 2005, I actually started at National Instruments, and I spent 12 years of my career at NI, and it was absolutely fantastic. I got to interact with customers, much like many of you on the phone, answering some really cool questions. And then I transferred into R&D, where I took over ownership of mostly LabVIEW implemented software like the DAC Assistant. And I always joke with everybody in any of my presentations. I always ask how many people have used the DAC Assistant, and maybe half of the room's hands goes up, and I say, yeah, all the good stuff, that was me. All the bad stuff, that was somebody else, which, ha, ha, ha. But the whole entire point is I cut my teeth on professional software development at NI, implementing very large-scale, very complex, very dynamic applications like the DAC Assistant. And you talk about dynamic UIs, the DAC Assistant is one of the most dynamic UIs I have ever worked on. And it's actually not written in object-oriented programming because it's implemented in LabVIEW, I think it's LabVIEW 8.0. They might have updated it to 8.2. Regardless, before 0.0 was a thing in LabVIEW. Holy moly. All right, so there towards the tail end of my career at National Instruments, I got my Certified LabVIEW Architect certification. I also moved into marketing, which is where I discovered I can talk. And you guys are about to be the poor beneficiaries of that. Then I transitioned to Cirrus Logic, which is in downtown Austin. And I was tasked with something that seemed absolutely insurmountable. That is, to enable the validation framework engineers at Cirrus Logic to do their jobs without rewriting test or validation software, even as Cirrus Logic's projects rapidly evolve. So how do you write software in a way that can be easily adaptable as a company's products rapidly evolve? That's what I was tasked with. And this is where I really got into object-oriented programming for a lot of the concepts that we've already talked about thus far. Spent 3 fantastic years at Cirrus Logic, which is where I became a LabVIEW champion, and I walked Cirrus Logic through the Center of Excellence program that NI offers. If you're not familiar with the Center of Excellence program, holy moly, check it out. It's amazing. All right, left Cirrus Logic. I started the consulting gig. I went to Compose Systems for about a year. While I was there, I also started G Central, which we're going to cover towards the end of the presentation. And then I transitioned over to DMC as a project engineer, which is where I'm at right now. So in each of these circumstances, I was asked to do the impossible and reuse code, and learning from others was the means to success. A little bit about DMC. We've got closer to 200 employees now spread all across the United States, been around for almost 25 years. Our areas of expertise, manufacturing automation and intelligence, think all things PLC. Test and measurement, think all things NI. Embedded development and embedded programming, think embedded programming. Application development, across the board, whatever the language is, we can do it. And then digital workspace solutions. This is things like Microsoft technologies, things like SharePoint and Office 365 and other stuff. Lots of industries served across the board. So DMC, we do a lot of things. All right. How do you become a hero? Here's what I'm going to suggest. You become a hero by standing on the shoulders of giants who've come before you. And what that's going to involve is at least three things: humility, trust, and growth. And I say humility because in order to stand on the shoulders of giants who've come before you, you have to acknowledge that you might be in over your head. Well, when you stand on the shoulders of giants, you're no longer in over your head, but you have to acknowledge that you need help. And that's hard, and I acknowledge that. The second thing is you got to trust the shoulders that you're standing on. So how do you find trustworthy shoulders? And then what I suggest is the last part. You need to become those shoulders that other people can stand on. Over time, contribute to the overall chain. All right, concretely, when we say standing on the shoulders of giants, just outright, it means using somebody else's work, with their permission, of course. And that work might be straight up VIs. It might be content that they've generated online. Whatever it is, you're not necessarily originating, you're using or reusing their code. That reuse code might be from anywhere in the LabVIEW community. It might be from other people inside of your company. Perhaps you have an infrastructure group or a part of an infrastructure group designed to create code used across multiple projects. All right, I've been using this word a whole bunch, reuse code. Well, what do I mean when I say reuse code? I suggest the following definition. There's lots of room for controversy here. I'll acknowledge that. But a couple of characteristics. I suggest reuse code is code that provides, I'll say, generic functionality beyond a specific application. When I say beyond a specific application, think about file I/O APIs. File I/O is not specific to any one application. Lots of applications use file I/O. But the file I/O it's generic. Again, it's not specific to a particular application. Great. Second thing is changing the original code on disk changes every spot where that code is invoked. So this is single sourced across projects. There's one spot on disk where that one VI lives, even though it might be used in multiple projects. So changing that one VI propagates your change across all the projects that call it. And the analogy would be like a sub-VI in another VI, but the scope is bigger than any LabVIEW project. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir, so I'm pushing through this quickly. You're already way familiar with reuse code, like crazy familiar with reuse code. Anytime you invoke an instrument driver or, DAC-MX, these are VIs that live on disk that you link to across multiple projects. And if you went inside of where those VIs are installed on disk and you change them, you've just changed all of your applications. So clearly don't do that. But point is, you can. And there's many LabVIEs. In fact, the vast majority of things in vi.lib, they're designed to be reused. That's what vi.lib is. Tons of NI toolkits. Oh my gosh, so much more. So we're already familiar with reuse code. What reuse code is not. So I'm going to distinguish it from what I'll call template code. Template code is designed to be copied and pasted, which is not reused. And it divorces you from the original instance of the code. So template code separates an instance from the original. It's a copy. Therefore, you cannot affect wide-scale change since the instance isn't linked to the original. And there are advantages to that. Perhaps for a particular application, you want a set of VIs. You want to start off with some functionality, but maybe tweak them a little bit. And you don't want that change to affect anybody else, any other projects. So there's advantages to templatized code. And by the way, you're already way familiar with templatized code. If you've ever used a LabVIEW template or a sample project, that's templatization. There are these VIs that live on disk that get programmatically copied and customized, and that's your starting point. Now, I'm going to suggest, again, that's not reuse, that's templatization. But we're already familiar with those two flavors of code, reuse and templatization. All right, so why use reuse code? Because somebody has gone before you, and it's likely they've stepped on some landmines that hopefully you won't have to. So there's maybe some degree of expertise that you get to benefit from. And by the way, that's one less problem for you to solve. When I got to Cirrus Logic, I found I wanted to interact with our documentation utility called Confluence. If you guys have ever heard of Confluence before, think of it like a wiki on steroids. Well, I like the idea of programmatically interrogating my LabVIEW project, finding all classes and all VIs, pulling out all of the documentation, and then putting them into a Confluence page. Cool. Well, where's my Confluence API? Turns out that's not a thing. I searched high and low, and it doesn't exist. So I created it. That's actually a thing now, and I wrote an auto documentation utility. Anybody who wants to use that is more than welcome to it, and that's one less problem for you to solve. Why else would you use reuse code? Because 9 times out of 10, the reuse code, you can see their block diagrams, and so you can actually learn programming paradigms and what do other people do? How do other people write code? So I'm going to pause right there. I'm hearing dings in my headset. Are people asking questions? If not, then it's just dings in my headset from something else on my computer, which is totally fine. All right, pressing on. So why would you use reuse code? At least those 3 things. Why don't we use reuse code? Because it involves trust in the author and the quality of the code. You're likely going to need to somehow vet that code. Although, interestingly enough, when we take a look at other programming languages like Python, it seems like everybody will, pip install whatever's out there without giving it a second thought. But when it comes to LabVIEW, we pay an extremely high degree of scrutiny to reuse code, which is a little bit unfair. Although I would suggest from the LabVIEW community's perspective, we should be interrogating the code that we reuse. In Python, I think everybody just lets stuff slip in, which don't get me started. Why else don't we use reuse code? Because the person who designed it didn't make it easy to use. Like, perhaps you install it on disk. Great. Do you have to, how do you find it on disk? Was it exposed through the palette? I don't know. How do you find it? Is there any documentation on it? I don't know. Okay, something else. Pride. There's something called not invented here syndrome. Companies will invent stuff from scratch just so they know that they have complete control over it. And I understand there are some good reasons for that and some not so good reasons for it. Other reasons we don't use reuse code. Licensing confusion. And there's a lot to get confused over. Licensing is hard. Here's one. The code almost does what I want, but not quite. So it's not extensible and customizable for your needs. And so we either copy it and customize it or just choose to write our own. Here's a big one. I can't find it. What code is actually out there for me to reuse? We're going to get to that in a second. So what does good reuse code even smell like? I'm going to suggest a whole list of things. It should be purposeful and focused. A body of code should have a small charter that makes it easy for you to understand the deliverable or the value add. Maybe there's an array manipulation palette. Yeah, probably manipulates arrays. There's probably some good stuff in there. Cool, but it's not the array manipulator / coffee machine. That's probably asking too much of it. So if there's a package of reuse code that does everything and the kitchen sink, that's what I'd call a code smell. It's probably not a good piece of code, with some exceptions. Ideally, that code is tested. Maybe it comes with a unit test suite. Hopefully, it's extensible. In other words, this is the O in solid principles. If you're unfamiliar with solid, LabVIEW Wiki, solid. Lots of really great stuff. O stands for open closed principle, meaning it's open for extension, but closed for modification. Object-oriented programming is a great way to implement this O. If you don't like the original implementation, you can inherit and override. So you haven't changed the original, you just extended, or perhaps changed behavior. It's your own customization. Good code better be documented, better have an intuitive API. Ideally, there's some examples. Would be awesome if there was videos. Would be great if it was supported, which means like an active community, or a developer who's responsive to bugs. Or if it's not supported, better be open sourced, with appropriate licenses. Ideally, this one bit of reuse code depends on other reuse code. In other words, I don't want to go and find a bit of reuse code that already re-implements a JSON parser when there's tons of JSON parsers out there. Let's all try and reuse each other's code. Anyways, get the idea. I would love it to be findable. Great, and so much more. What does good reuse code smell like? At least these things, plus so much more. And if you needed more, great. And if not, you're sold. Fantastic. Give me the code. And this is where we put on our capes as heroes, and we're like, I like this idea. I'm going to go find the code. And where are you guys going to look? I know. We're going to go to ni.com because that makes good sense. It's where a lot of code is. And you'll quickly see that ni.com has a community forums where people talk about lots of other places you can find code, like the NI Tools Network, or Lava, or NI Package Manager, or Git, or G Package Manager, or VI Package Manager. And all of a sudden, as heroes, we were flying straight, and now it seems like our code is distributed in so many places. How do I know where to look? And now we're actually on a trajectory to, crash and burn because I can't find the code. Where is it? Well, you have to go search 20 different places if you know where those 20 different places are. Well, is that unique to LabVIEW? Here's a comparison. If you've ever been to pypy.org, it's absolutely amazing. This is the one place that you can go and you can search for anything and get your hands on it inside of PyPy land. And in case your vision is bad like mine, let me zoom in. That's how many projects, releases, and users there are in this community. And this brings me to one of my fundamental points about LabVIEW and Python. Everybody sings the praises of Python as a language. And I mean, in my opinion, I think it's just actually an okay language. Its power is what you're looking at right now. It's not the language. It's the ecosystem. It's all the people who have written these little toolkits that you can find and get your hands on. And you can find them easily. And you can actually give your code away really easily. That's one of the major powers of Python. Does LabVIEW compare? Not so good, in all honesty, for all the reasons I've already said. You might want to go find something. Where do you go look? And it's in already 3 different package managers. And those package managers don't talk to each other. VI Package Manager, G Package Manager, NI Package Manager. Oh my gosh, this is nuts. This is where G Central comes in. The whole entire reason that I started this nonprofit organization was so we could find the code we need to be the heroes we need to be. Ultimately, I'm going to make a broad statement here. You'll hear and I talk about engineer ambitiously and the engineering grand challenges, and I love this message because I think as engineers, we are positioned almost better than anybody else on the planet to affect wide-scale good across this entire planet. I mean, think about it. We could invent fusion. We could invent new ways of recycling plastic. I can't do it alone. And I'm convinced that reuse code is a significant means to us achieving real Central's whole entire point. All right, so this gcentral.org thing, if you've never been to it, by all means, go check it out. What is this G? Our identity, we are a nonprofit organization providing a platform for G code packages and collaboration resources. It is designed, incepted for programmers who need to find, share, or co-develop G reusable code or software engineering tools. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, G Central is 100% independent, driven by community experts. We are beholden to no one, no company. We consider every company our peer. We are excited to work with other companies. We are thrilled to partner with other companies. G Central is in charge of its own destiny. And what is that destiny? That's our vision. To enable the LabVIEW community to make the best version of itself. We want us as developers to be hamstrung by nothing other than our own creativity. Well, how are we going to do that? Our vision is to improve our community's ability or capability by removing barriers to collaboration. That's it. That is G Central in a nutshell, so that we can stand on each other's shoulders and do really amazing things. All right, stop talking. Show me the goodness. Can you all see my browser? All right, welcome to G Central. G Central is all about finding code. Here, this is very much an alpha, but what you see here is a means to search through a lot of reusable code, regardless of its package type or its location. Right now, we expose G packages and VI packages. And if you've ever installed very common reuse tools like the Delacord Qt message handler, you probably got it through VI Package Manager, that thing that installs with LabVIEW. Well, there are a couple of repositories that VI Package Manager points to, and the same is with G Package Manager. Here they are. So if I want to search for something like, I don't know, pain relief. If you've never heard of this toolkit, it's fantastic. Hopefully this works. It never works when you need it to. All right, here we go. So here's the description. If you've ever done panes inside of a single VI, managing them can be kind of a pain, no pun intended. This is a toolkit written by one of the folks over at JKI to make pain management easy. How would you ever known that this existed? Yeah, good luck with all that. You have to attend the CLA summits or something along those lines, which no knocking on the CLA summits or NI week. That's great. But I would propose you shouldn't have to go to these summits to learn about things that are out there. G Central is a means to that end. So this is a way that we index a lot of common reuse code. If you're curious about who we are, this is the organization. I guarantee you've used lots of these people's code. If you ever use the Q controls, that's Q right there. That guy, Eric Reffett, that's him right there. All right, lots of FAQ. Who are we? What do we do? How you can support us? Blah, 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 blah. Here's a big one. What are all the community resources out there? Like, the LabVIEW Wiki. How about GDevCon? If you guys are unfamiliar with GDevCon, you're missing out. What about, what do we call this? Oh yeah, VI Week. Last year during the pandemic, the community got together and we hosted our own NI Week. We called it VI Week. And it might continue to happen. Don't know. Here are the 3 different package managers. So lots of stuff on G Central. The whole entire point is making sure everybody in the community knows about the community resources so we can do amazing things to turn this world into someplace even more fantastic. All right. Now, one of those interesting toolkits is actually this thing called MGI's panel actors. Tom just showed us how you can use panels to host other VIs. Well, one of the things that he showed us is his class has a method called view, I think. And every class has to implement or override this thing called view. Well, this begs an interesting design question. If you're writing a test, should a test care about how it's viewed? Does that part of the definition of a test? No. But that's a problem that we just kind of, I'll just give it a view class or view method and everybody just has to override it. Great. Well, there are different object-oriented principles, specifically through something called composition versus inheritance that lets you solve this abol problem. We want tests to be viewable. And I don't want the test to have to know how it's being viewed. I just want it to be viewable. Panel actors, it's a framework that solves this problem with DQMH modules and the actor framework. And if you've never heard about it, you're missing out. So you can do things like for a hardware abstraction layer, one of your classes might be the generic concept of an instrument where an instrument has a name and an ID. But for something like a power supply, the power supply supplies its own view. So inside of your generic instrument, which is a subpanel, Your subpanels got subpanels, bro. So now we're talking like Inception level stuff. And in this case, this actor hosts another actor where you can specify things like the IP address or the output state, whatever. So now you can really start to dynamically compose UIs where that UI has multiple layers of hierarchy. Maybe there's an instrument that has a sub-hierarchy of type DMM with a sub-hierarchy of specific DMM. And the UI changes depending on the type of instrument, the classification, and the vendor. Sounds great. I don't want to implement that framework. Don't. It's done for you. Stand on the shoulders of giants, if you can find the code, hence G-Central. All right, some other examples of customization. Check this out. At DMC, we have come up with this thing called Grid Viewer. So you might have a series of views, maybe these are instruments, and you want to drag and drop them to this different grid. Great, have a field day. We've solved this problem. Stand on the shoulders of giants. Don't solve these problems on your own. Object-oriented principles. I was going to get to this from the LabVIEW Wiki. We've kind of already talked about this. There's a number of articles inside of here. If you've not seen object-oriented programming before, fantastic. I actually wrote this, traditional versus object-oriented programming. It's way out of date and mostly wrong. Don't pay attention to it. All right, other examples of reuse code that's out there. So I mentioned auto documentation. This is one of my repositories for something called the LabVIEW Watchdog Framework. Any of you is welcome to it. It's open source. You can get to it on Bitbucket. Have a field day. Rather than showing you what the Watchdog does, I want to see the documentation of the API. I wrote a toolkit, which you can get your hands on for free. This is a part of that auto documentation Atlassian thing that I mentioned, where I can generate this wiki page for every class. So I'm going to programmatically scour your class and return the member name, scope, is a dynamic dispatch, must override, here's the description, and by the way, here's a picture of the API. Well, how many classes do I have inside of here? Quite a few. And all of these programmatically generated. So my utility, you point it to a project, and I'll generate all of this stuff programmatically. Wait for it. Oh, including things like the private data of the class, as well as the type of data. Holy moly. So I can put this inside of your Git repository, or I can generate Confluence pages for you. It's up to you. Don't stand on the shoulders of giants when it comes to auto documentation. This is one example. Another example is this really cool thing called AutoDoc. Oh, I'm sorry, AntiDoc. Wait for it. Yeah, that's it. So AntiDoc will take something like a DQMH project, and it'll generate all of the messages sent between all of the different modules automatically, plus all the documentation for your classes and your APIs. That's fantastic. How are you supposed to figure that out? Well, hopefully G-Central is going to help you find the reuse code that's out there. All right, lots of other community stuff I could talk through. Let's get back to the presentation. Whoa. So I would say that the future of the LabVIEW community is bright. If you go on the LabVIEW community forums, you'll see that you can create your own signatures, and people are starting to include the G-Central emblem in their signatures so that we get the word out. In addition to, of course, needing funding, as we always do, getting known and used is one of our biggest objectives. We think that we really can bring a lot to the community, and we're looking at expanding even more what we can do. We need to get the word out and get used. So these are some folks that you might recognize. Sam Taggart, Quentin Aldridge, this guy, Crossrules, Tim Robbins is his name. He's got 25,000 posts. Then you've got Altenbach, who's got 40,000 posts. All these folks, they're endorsing what we're doing. And speaking of endorsements, if you want to find out more about G-Central, oh, wait. Go to About. Here's our CLA presentation. And Jeff Kadosky himself shares his ideas about G-Central. So this is an hour-long presentation. I apologize for that. If you're ever having a hard time going to sleep at night, watch this. All right. So I would say the future for our community is bright. there's a chance for us to at least find each other's code, and I hope we start to make reuse code in vast quantities. Now, how you make reuse code, that's a whole other presentation. No, it's a whole series of presentations. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's a mix of art and science. What do you put in these reuse libraries? How do you create a good API? How do you make it extensible for other people to use? It's architect level stuff. And some of it is just straight up computer science-y things. Some of it's kind of preferential. Some of it's kind of wisdom, mountaintop experience, art and science stuff. Anyways, if you'd like to make reuse code at your company and you're a little bit daunted at the challenge, hire a consultant. It will save you time and money. Contact me. I'd be happy to help out there. And there's tons of consultants, but I would say that DMC excels at this. All right. Reuse code to know what's out there. Here's a couple of things. If you've not heard of these, just go get them now. DMC offers a GUI suite, just a whole bunch of buttons, and you install it by a VI package. It's a way to make your GUIs look fresh and clean, and you don't have to do anything except drag and drop from your palette. OpenG, holy cow, don't get me started. There's so much inside of there. Queue controls, my auto documentation utility, which depends on the Atlassian API, JSON Next, or JSON Text. The MGI tools. MGI tools, like OpenG, is a whole entire grab bag of tools. Oh my gosh. MGI Panel Manager, showed you that. MGI Monitored Actor, gosh. Hidden gems in LabVIEW. Is Darren on still on the phone? Fingers crossed. That's all right. So Darren went into VI-lib, and he found all of the really cool functions that are kind of hidden way down deep, but are really, really powerful. And he exposed those functions on the palette by this thing called Hidden Gems in LabVIEW. So if you install this palette, you get access to some really cool hidden stuff. So thank you, Darren, for doing that. And then pain relief. I showed you that. All right, additional resources. Again, gcentral.org. So there's the CLA presentation I showed you all, the community resources, NI Package Manager, the LabVIEW Tools Network, VI Package Manager, G Package Manager, Package Manager Comparison Chart. What's the difference between these different package managers, and when would you use one versus the other? That's what the Package Manager Comparison Chart is all about. And that, I would say, is the road to becoming a hero. Don't start on your own. Stand on the shoulders of giants who've come before you, use their work, deliver results, learn from their work, develop tools that others can use. And that is all I have to say about that. Questions?
That was fantastic.
Thank you. Oh, somebody just asked a loaded question. Can you please talk a little bit about why there are multiple package managers and the pros and cons? Sure. Let me share my screen again. All right. So you guys can see the LabVIEW wiki, yeah? All right. Package, PAC, package, manager. Yeah, that thing. So here are the pros and cons, or that is to say, perhaps a side-by-side comparison of the three different package managers. Now, this is meant to be completely objective. There are no one is faster than the other, because that's a subjective call. I didn't time any of this stuff. But things like, does it install with LabVIEW? Who was it created by? How many years has it been out there? Is it open sourced? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so why do we have these three different package managers to begin with? Well, a lot of it is a mix between the community's need, history, and business. And probably one of the biggest driving factors is straight up business. VI Package Manager was created by JKI a good long time ago to solve the problem of bundling bundling VIs together and making that bundle dependent on versions of other bundles of code. That's one of the definitions of packages. Well, solution didn't exist, and JKI needed it. So by necessity, they created it. And then, good on JKI, they put on their business hats and they started selling it. And it turns out it solved a huge problem in the LabVIEW community. And VI Package Manager, for the longest time, and it is the de facto standard by which community code is found and installed. Cool. So, what about NI Package Manager? How'd that come about? All right, and for all the NI folks who are on the phone, hopefully I do this justice. NI Package Manager was brought about because of the need and desire of NI's customers for a fast install and for a quick way to find all the software that they needed, including device drivers. Well, as we noted earlier, NI.com, that shining star that it is, it's not easy for us to find what we need. So NI Package Manager is a unified way for us as the customers to find and install what we need, and that installation is way quick. And it turns out that we out in the community can make our own NI packages now. Cool. So the reason why NI Package Manager came about is because NI needed a means of distributing its software in a way that met its customers' needs. And that's a business need and a technological need. So VI Package Manager and NI Package Manager kind of running in parallel. Then this new kid, G Package Manager, comes on the block, and it does some stuff that neither of the other two package managers does. In particular, project-specific installation of packages. So here's what I mean. Earlier I said that we define reuse packages as the one VI on disk that you can link to from multiple projects, so that you update the code in one spot and it affects multiple projects, right? So that's how you can affect mass change. Turns out that's not always desirable. In fact, oftentimes that is not desirable because as a consultant, you might want to work with, I'm making these customers up now. Let's say that I work with Dell to put together their testing application. And I use version 1.0 of OpenG to implement Dell's stuff. Cool. I ship Dell their application, and they're off on their way. And then Compaq, another computer, Hewlett-Packard, comes along and they say, hey, we want you to make an application for us too. And I go, cool. And I use OpenG 2.0. And so I install OpenG 2.0 on my computer, and I implement the solution for Hewlett-Packard. A year later, Dell comes back and says, can you fix this bug? And I go, sure. And I open up the original application that I had written, and now that application that depended on OpenG 1.0 links to 2.0. Holy crap. Well, what did OpenG 2.0 change? And how is that going to influence what I gave to Dell from a year ago? And now I have to revalidate my whole entire code base. What a mess. G Package Manager comes along, and with G packages, I can install the 2.0 of a library for one project and at the same time install the 1.0 version of a library for a different project. That's the primary value add for G Package Manager. And there's some other things as well. So again, that's where this scope of installation comes into play. Here you see the scope of installation for a G package is actually per project. For NI Package Manager, as of today, more or less, it's across the entire system. You get one version of a package on your computer. And then for VI Package Manager, you can install one version per version of LabVIEW. So, and again, there's lots of different comparisons. This is, as you would imagine, a very highly charged, contentious, difficult conversation to have because it also directly influences us. Like if I'm going to write reuse code, which package manager do I choose? It's a difficult question. And that's one of the reasons why creating reuse code is not for the faint of heart. Sometimes it's a difficult problem by nature, and I have to acknowledge, I think it's a difficult problem because we and our community have made it a difficult problem unnecessarily by virtue of having 3 different package managers. So that's a problem, and I don't know what the solution looks like yet. There's a couple of different ways we can skin that cat. Everything's kind of still up in the air. What about sending a customer an installer for code that uses a lot of reuse code? how do we distribute that without making the customer install 10 different things? That's a great question. So what you can do, instead of giving them a whole bunch of reuse libraries, compile it into an executable. One of the questions that I have is, why are we distributing source to our end customer? So one way is that you can compile it into a black box. If you do need to distribute source, one of the things that I choose to do is I use actually virtual machines a fair amount, and that allows me to sandbox. So Tom, I don't know if I answered the question or not.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about like if you build software for a customer, then the customer gets the source code because it's we built it for them.
Great. No, this is fantastic. So for our customers, we oftentimes LVlibPs, pack project libraries. We'll get to that in just a second. Right. So one of the things that I enjoy, yes, and all of our faces just fell. So one of the things that I enjoy doing is I love doing all of my development inside of Git. So that's GitLab, GitHub, or SourceTree. I'm sorry, Bitbucket, whatever. If a customer needs access to the code, I invite them to the repo, and then they're more than welcome to clone it. And I need to provide some setup instructions as well. Now, one of the ways I can provide those setup instructions is links to all of these packages, which is, that's terrible. Or I can create a package that depends on all of my dependencies, and all they have to do is double-click on that one package, and everything gets installed. So long as all of those dependencies are of the same package type. And that's where maybe I wanted to use something from G Package Manager, a VI package, and an NI package driver. Now I have to give them 3 different packages to install all sets of those dependencies. And that's a fail in my opinion. Hopefully we can solve that in the future. All right, pack project libraries. Man, pack project libraries have their ups and downs. For those of you who haven't used pack project libraries, it's a means for you to take an LV lib and compile it, and then you distribute that as an atomic thing that people can then call from their source. Cool. However, the source that might have referred to so name.lvlib::vi name, all of those sites now have to get updated to point to LVlibP. So the caller needs to get changed. It's one of the downsides. There are some things that have changed recently so that you can, from your source, link to the pack project library versus the source. That helps. I think that was only implemented as either in 2018 or 2019. Suffice it to say, pack project libraries are not the silver bullet. There are tons of caveats. Before you adopt them, do your research. There's definitely good reasons to use them and definitely reasons to avoid them. Lots of CLA presentations on that. Other thoughts? I could talk all day and all night, but I know it's starting to get late at night. So if there's other questions, I'm all over this. If not, we can definitely call it a night. If you have questions about G Central, by all means, feel free to reach out. G Central, as a nonprofit, we're always looking for partners, both in terms of messaging, marketing, and of course, financial. So if you believe in the vision, we would love to talk to you. That's all I got to say about that. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, Chris. We really appreciate you phoning in from afar and sharing all the knowledge. I think there's a lot of really good recommendations and kind of explanations for why things are the way they are, and some guidance on what to use in what situations. Is your presentation available somewhere, or will it be available somewhere?
So I can, how about this? I'll send you the PowerPoint presentation, and then if you guys want to distribute it amongst the group, by all means, feel free to have a field day.
Yeah, we can definitely handle that. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Cool. All right. Well, last chance for questions for Chris.
Mark, it's good to see you. Just want to say that.
Great. All right. Well, thanks again, both to you guys, both Chris and Tom, for presenting. We definitely went pretty far over today, so we started losing people at the end, unfortunately. But really looking forward to seeing everybody in Q3 in person. Chris, feel free to join us too. Bring the rest of the LabVIEW team. We'll grill out.
You said the magic word, steak. I'm there.
Yeah, West presentation steak. So it's worth coming.
I love it. I love it.
Cool. Jed, any last notes?
Trying to think if there's anything. No, I know like that. I think there's a lot of good material going up for NI Connect in the coming weeks. We already mentioned that one. I guess. Last one. I know I have heard from multiple people. I'll throw it out there. If you are in need of hardware from NI, I have heard from a number of people that shipping times are getting longer. I know we are impacted by the chip shortage the same way that a lot of other companies are. And so if you know that you are going to need hardware, get orders in earlier rather than later. So, like we are doing our best to prioritize all the things we can, but we're impacted by those things the same as a lot of other companies are. So I'll just throw that out there for you. You may see longer, like I know a significant portion of our products do have at least one chip, like one short supply chip in them. So make sure to get those. Make sure if you need stuff urgently that you plan ahead.
Jed, you may not be able to comment on this, but do you have any sense on what those lead times are, or is it so wildly varying? Which then not even worth answering.
It's so wildly varying. I can't comment at probably half the products don't really seem to have any issues at all. But when you have a system that's combined of multiple different things, the odds that you're going to have at least one thing in your system that's got a short lead time or has a long lead time on it is a realistic thing. So, but yeah, just want to throw that out there for you. If you can check in with us if you want to know more about something specific, and we can look into it. But that is something that we're seeing a little bit more of.
Cool.
All right.
Well, I have a few words. I think I was talking about the next user meeting, and I was just letting people know that the motion control package is complete. Should be out on VI Package Manager soon. I've been ready to send it off to NI for review. And we just, if anybody's interested in being able to do motion again with LabVIEW, they can contact me.
Thanks, Eric. You'll have to share some knowledge on the process too.
Well, it's been a month just trying to get into the VI Package Manager. I still have a few little things to take care of, but I think got it going.
Great. Cool.
Nice.
All right. Well, thanks again, Chris and Tom, and for everybody else for attending, and looking forward to seeing you guys in September.
Those are good. See y'all. Thanks again.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Tom.